Hi, and welcome to Untethered with Jen Liss, the podcast that's here to help you break free, be you, and unleash your inner brilliance. I'm your host, Jen, and in this episode, we're going to talk about why the heck I started a podcast in the first place. Let's dive in. Hey there, unicorn. It's Jen. Welcome back to the podcast for a bonus episode. Bonus. Is that the bonus song? I think that's our new bonus song. Bonus. Maybe somebody can sing me a bonus song for when we have a bonus episode. I wanted to come on and share a little bit more with you about why I started a podcast in the first place. So I get a lot of questions about my journey and how I came to the point that I'm at right now. And I've given little bits and pieces along the way in a variety of episodes, but I haven't sat down and talked about my entire journey that led me to the point that I'm at today, where I'm not only podcasting, but I'm actually teaching a podcasting course here in a few weeks, showing other people, walking them across the threshold of starting their own podcast. So with everything that I've been through in the past few years, it feels like a really good time right now to take a step back and show you and walk you through the journey that I've been on, because I never thought that I would be here. Starting a podcast, for goodness sakes, not something that a couple of years ago I would have ever done. In fact, I had a conversation with my husband in bed this morning. We were talking and he was like, "You have grown into this person that I never knew." And he's like, "There's pieces and parts of you that I never would have known if you had not gone on this journey." And a lot of that journey really took off when I started podcasting, but it did begin even before that. And one of the cool things was him telling me just how proud he is of the person who I am and how much it has helped him to grow and how much he has seen other people in our own lives be inspired and grow because of the yeses that I have said to myself. And so as you listen to my journey, really my deepest desire is for you to be reflecting on your own life and what this could mean for you. And if it inspires anything for yourself. And, you know, I would freaking love to have you in my podcasting course, because I believe that podcasting offers so much for people in ways that you have no freaking idea that it could improve your life. But that's not really just what this episode is about. It's to hopefully inspire you to take whatever that next step is for you courageously, because there is so much for you on the other side of this little fear, because fear is a sign that you are about to step across a threshold. Fear is just a signal. When you experience fear and excitement are two sides of the same coin. It means that there is something exciting for you on the other side. And fear is just saying, "Hey, did you know that you're about to go beyond what you have done before?" I just want to make sure that you're taking a little check-in with yourself and that you know that there's something that you're about to do. So if you're experiencing fear, know that there's something exciting for you. And that's why you're afraid, is because it's like, yo, take a look. Is there something that you want to look at here? Is there something, are you doing what you really want to do? And 9.9 times out of 10, yes, you want to do it because you're experiencing the fear, because you're moving towards something very exciting for you. Now, for me, this happened back in, it was really probably 2018 where I really started feeling a lot of nudges. I was starting to get unsatisfied in my job. I had gotten pretty comfortable. It was a job that was very hard for me in 2015. Very hard. I completely changed careers. I left hairstyling. I went back to school. I got my degree and I started a new career as an intern and moved my way up into being relatively comfortable in that job. It was a hard creative job, being a copywriter for one of the largest companies in America, one of the largest companies in the world. Very difficult job in many ways, but also really fun, getting to write scripts and commercials that made it, nationally. And it was really, really cool. And I, in particular, am very proud of some of the goofy stuff that I helped that company to put out into the world. Some of my goofiest scripts, the ones that I had, surprise, surprise, you'll be not surprised by this if you listen to my podcast. that goofy stuff that I put out for that company, those scripts that I wrote that got made, that got produced, that were all over. One of them was during March Madness. These ads were being placed all over the place from the super goofy, ridiculously goofy script that I had written. It was the most fun thing for me. And everybody felt that in the writing. So that's just another nudge to follow your fun. But I had started to get a little bit more brave. I was getting more brave being me, putting some of those ideas out there in the world that were fully me in this job. But I was feeling like I was tapping out. I was like, I know that there's more that is possible for me in this job or in my career, something. I just wasn't satisfied. And I was hitting that same place that I had felt with hair, where I had grown so much and I just felt like I was inside this box and I couldn't find my way out of it. I was starting to feel stifled. And so I started going around to all of the people who I worked with, who I really looked up to. And I was having these little informational interviews. And I was just like, hey, how did you grow? How did you get to the point that you're at? I went to mentors. And then I even started to go to leaders in the company. I started getting braver and I was having these 20, 30-minute little informational interviews with leaders at the company. Now that took some courage. I was sweaty a few times sending those meeting requests or sending a little message to them, asking for a meeting with them. So sweaty. So I fully understand if that idea would even make you nervous. But these were teeny tiny steps that I was taking that were leading me in a certain direction. At the same time, I was not a podcast listener at all, period. I had heard of podcasts, but I thought that was for dorky people. Like, I'm so dorky, by the way, but in my mind, I'm like, that's for like tech dorks. And so I did not listen to podcasts. I'm like, that's for people who love sports and tech. And, I like sports enough, but I'm not going to sit and listen to sports podcasts like my husband. But I had heard that there were other podcasts out there in the world. And I was honestly getting to the point of desperate because nobody who I was asking all these questions, like I was getting some good stuff and I was getting some good information and it was kind of helpful, but not really showing me the way. So I went into Apple Podcasts app one day. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was cleaning house and I was just like, I'm tired of listening to the same old music. And so I go to that Apple Podcasts app that was automatically on my phone and I put in creative career help. Creative career help. I am stuck. I was feeling so stuck. And I was just like this moment of like, I need something. I need some help. These informational interviews are not getting me far enough. Nobody can show me the way. And I found this podcast called Don't Keep Your Day Job. Her name is Kathy Heller. And I started listening to her podcast and she was talking to other people who had very similar paths as me, where they were like, I got to a point and then I got stuck and then I didn't know what to do. And I was suddenly feeling so seen. So freaking seen by Kathy, by the people she was interviewing. They were people who had, been entrepreneurs and gone back to corporate or were in corporate and had been entrepreneurs and people just talking about career growth. And I was like, oh my goodness, I feel so seen. So I listened to her podcast for a couple of years. So all of this is kind of going on at the same time. I'm doing these informational interviews. I'm listening to this podcast. I'm starting to see that there are other people in the world who are struggling, which was so helpful to see, oh my gosh, there's other people struggling and there's somebody out here who wants to help. Well, around that time, she launches a course. Kathy, who has this podcast, launches a course. She calls it Made to Do This. And it's for people who feel like there's something out there that is more in the world for them than the life that they're currently living, than the job that they currently have. There's something more. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. This is me. This is me. This is me. I've never invested in self-growth beyond buying a whole bunch of books and investing my time and energy into listening to this podcast that I've started listening to. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking about taking this course, but it's thousands of dollars. This course is thousands of dollars. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I possibly going to ask my husband to take this course that costs thousands of dollars? Well, on one Sunday night, I finally confessed to him. I said, I really want to take this course. Like, I really feel like I'm not getting what I need to get. I need to take this course. And he was fully supportive. He was so supportive. He was like, yes, if this feels like the next thing for you, trust yourself. And yes. And I was like, wait, what? What you want me to do? Huh? You want me to put thousands of our dollars into this? And he's like, yes, please sign up for it. Again, so sweaty. I hit the button. I signed up for it. That moment changed my life. It changed my life in all of the ways. I can't even tell you all of the ways. Let me count the ways. This entire podcast goes through many of those ways in which that has changed my life, because she was showing us that there's something different for us, that there is something different for you. You don't have to continue down this exact path that you're on or the path that anybody else has set for you. And I was hearing this message for the very first time alongside other people who were also those same people, the other people who were being seen by this podcast that I was listening to. We all were united in this course, and we were all like feeling like, oh my gosh, we can do this. We can do this. We can do this. I still had no desire to start a podcast. In this process, I had no desire to start a podcast. And in this course, we were to come up with a business idea. And I had so many business ideas. One of them has actually circled back around, and it might come to fruition. Let me tell you that there were so many business ideas that I had. I think I started a Facebook group called The Guilty Party that was for people who were experiencing extreme guilt for no reason, because I realized that was something that I was struggling with. I started all of these things. Well, then COVID happened. And it was right at that moment when we were all suddenly working from home. And I realized that we all needed something. I was like, what the frick is happening? I started a Facebook group and I was like, what do I have that can help people right now? Creativity. So I started this Facebook group very next day. And I told my husband, I'm going to go live in this Facebook group this morning, and I'm going to issue a creative challenge. And I'm going to tell people, let's all make something magical. I'm going to issue this challenge. I'm going to tell people why I care so much about creativity and why it's something that can help them right now. And that it's really important that we all stay creative and that we have some kind of rhythm to our day, because I wasn't going to be driving to work anymore. And so I was going to do this little creative challenge every day at 7 a.m. And I was going to do it again at 5 p.m. at the time when I would have gotten in my car to go drive to work. We're going to do this creative challenge. Everybody who's suddenly working from home, let's all gather around. Let's get in this Facebook group and let's do this. I called it the Creative Commute. And I ended up doing that for over a year. We ended up doing these challenges almost every single day, getting together, drawing prizes, having so much fun. It got myself, my husband, and a lot of us through the pandemic. As I started talking, let's back up 1 second to a very important moment that my husband hates me telling about. But I'm going to tell it anyway, because it's not a slight on him. It's exactly a representation of who I was and where I was at that time. I tell him I'm going to go live. I'm like, I'm going to go live this morning, honey. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go in that Facebook group. And I think at that time there were like 16 people who had joined. It was like 7. And then when I went to go live, I was like, oh my gosh, there's like 16 people in here. I was so nervous and so sweaty again to push the button that I said, I'm going to do it. And he said, what are you going to say? Because I am introverted, y'all. I'm so introverted. I, at that time, did not talk to, I hardly talked to my own friends. Like when we would get together, I'm really good and always have been hairstylist one-on-one with people, or with my 2 best friends that I've grown up with forever. But in a big group of people, I tend to be more of the listener. And when I would need to say something, I had actually this adult stutter that I was very embarrassed of, because I would think too much about what I was going to say. I would get too nervous and I would think about what I was going to say before I would say it. And then it would come out all kinds of mumbled up, like my words were in the wrong order. I don't know if you've ever had this, if you've been one of those people, but it was very embarrassing. And so I would often not say anything at all. And when I would go to say something, then it would be all kinds of fucked up. And then I would feel embarrassed. And it was a whole self-fulfilling prophecy. And so he's like, what are you going to say? And he's also like going on Facebook Live and podcasting. It's not something that was really in our realm anyway at the time. And so it was a legit question. I was not offended by the question. I was just like, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to talk about creativity. Like it feels like something that I should be talking about right now at this point in time. I feel like I can help people. I feel like this will help myself. And so that's what I did. And again, it went on for a year. But in between that, while that Facebook group is still going on, I found myself loving this. I was loving it. All of a sudden, this girl who had nothing to say suddenly had a fuck ton to say. I have a lot to say. Turns out I have a lot to say. I have a lot that I care about. I started getting really, really curious. And these lives that I was doing on Facebook Live was only 7 minutes a day. It's like, okay, I've got 7 minutes. We're going to keep it short. Sometimes it would go a little longer. Sometimes we were having a lot of fun, like going back and forth in the chat. People were writing in and we were talking about our favorite Easter candy on Easter. And we were talking about the creative challenges that we would do. And we were having a lot of fun. So sometimes it would go long, but generally it was very light and very fun. 7 to 15 minutes. That was it. And I was like, I have a lot more to say. Turns out I've got a lot to say about creativity. I have a lot that I'm curious about. I have a lot to explore. And all of a sudden, somebody who previously had no voice that I was sharing with the world at all, or I was doing it through creative expression for a corporation, had a lot to say for myself, things that I really wanted to share with the world. I was realizing some things that I really cared a lot about that I hadn't previously. I've always cared about them. I didn't really let myself share about it. And it was opening that tap just a little tiny bit that all of a sudden it was like rainbows were just pouring out of, like actual rainbows and glitter and magic were pouring out of the spout. And I was like, I think I want to start a podcast. This is so weird. Like me, I think Joey, I think I want to start a podcast. And he was, again, my husband's so supportive. He was so supportive of it. And he's like, you know what, I'll edit it for you. And so he offered to help me. We had no idea what the frick we're doing. Zero idea, like nothing. I did not take a podcasting course. I took this other course from somebody who happens to podcast. That person was not teaching us how to podcast at all. She does have a podcasting course she does once a year, but I did not take that course. I just figured it out completely, like blind. In fact, I decided 2 weeks ahead of time that I was going to do it. I was like, okay, when's the next new moon? We're just going to launch this thing. And we did. And it was really messy and really funky and really hard in some ways because I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't have like process and I didn't have a class and I didn't have somebody walking me through it. I was just like, we're just going to do this. Fortunately, I did have the support of Joey, who was helping me a little bit along the way, but I just made it happen. I just made it happen because I knew. I had this knowing, I had this feeling, and I had been through enough things in the past couple of years that I knew I just needed to listen to it. I was getting really in touch with my intuition in a way that I previously had not been, and putting the dots together on things that I had felt my entire life that I knew I needed to say yes to this. And that started this journey. I called it the creative commute. It wasn't called Untethered with Jen Liss. You can go back. I've left every episode up of this podcast. You can go back to those very initial episodes and hear me being like, creativity, what is it? Dude, let's talk about it. That has led me to realizing what really is important to me. That entry point of creativity, which was something I knew was really helpful for people and really helpful for myself at the time, was this entry point to me understanding what it is I truly, truly care about, which is helping people realize how fucking brilliant you are, how amazing you are, how magical you are, that you have these gifts that really they're supposed to be given to the world. And we're so tethered that we're not. And the idea of the creative commute actually was so wrapped up in that too, because your gifts travel with you. They go with you. Your gifts are always there and you're always honing them and developing them and creating, like getting new skills that can help you. But you've got this purpose inside of you. And it is a drive. It is a calling. And you have this inside of you too. There is some calling. There is some drive that has been moving you through your life, through your entire life. It's always been there with you. And whether we're super connected to it or not, and listening to it super deeply or not, it's there. In the quiet, in the 2 a.m. knowing, and those 2 a.m. little whispers that you hear in the middle of the night when you're like, I can't sleep, but because my mind is reeling on something, that your intuition is speaking to you. And for many of us, we aren't clearing the spigot. I love this story. This is one of the stories that Kathy, so at this point, I coached with Kathy quite a bit because she was really speaking to me. She was pulling something out of me that I didn't realize in myself. She was showing me the way. And I actually worked for her all of last year. In 2023, they had an opening on their team and they knew I was building my coaching practice. And they said, "Hey, Jen, do you want to come on and support us?" And so I did, which was, I'll tell you all about that learning episode or that learning in another episode sometime. I learned so much working for my mentor. And I really want to share all of that. I share it with my coaching clients all the time, the things that I have learned. And I would love to share it with all of you as well, because there's so much that I learned in that time. But this story that she shares, I think it was actually, it was a singer. It might have been Ed Sheeran. Somebody says this to her on her podcast, said, when you go to a cabin, like you go to a cabin that nobody stayed at in a long time, or you're the first person to show up for the summer. It's been, stagnant all winter long, and you turn on the faucet. And at first the water starts to come out kind of rusty and nasty, and it's kind of like sputtering and spitting, and it's not clear. But after it runs for a little bit, it starts to run smooth, starts to run more powerfully, it starts to run clear. That is the same with your voice. And so many of us have been stifled. We have stifled our voice. We have said something that was embarrassing. We have felt like we said something wrong. We've been told to be quiet. We've been told that what we say doesn't matter. We have somehow received that message. And a lot of times it happens in childhood. And part of it is just the way that the school system used to be, maybe still is in some ways. We were told that what we said didn't matter, that the authority mattered more than what your voice matters. And so we hear that message and we start to stifle. We physically, this is happening somatically in your body, and also mental patterns that are all wrapped together. We stifle our voices, and then we wonder why everybody's got thyroid problems and other health problems, because stifling your voice causes physical implications. And so a lot of us have inflammatory issues that are happening because we're physically stifling our voices. Again, that's a whole nother episode, but it was happening to me. And when I started to open up that tap and my voice and my message started to roll through, I started to feel so much clarity for myself, and so many magical things have happened. Now, do I still sometimes feel like stifled and funky and like something needs to come out and then I have to realize and open up that tap again? Yes, we all do. That is the human experience. But what I will say is that podcasting has been the most powerful platform for me, the most powerful way, the most powerful avenue for my voice to begin to flow through. And we have to. In order to find your purpose, we're never going to find our purpose by looking on the outside and hoping that somebody is going to show it to us. We have to start speaking. It has to flow through you. Now, speaking can be on a podcast. I seriously think it's one of the most powerful ways. If you're being called to entrepreneurship, if you're feeling any nudge or any call to speak, if you're feeling a nudge or a call to be a leader, I truly think, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, start a fucking podcast. Start a podcast. Start using your voice. Start speaking. You can even, and maybe if you don't do a podcast, you can start Instagram living, can start Facebook living. Do something that lets you verbally share your voice, clear your throat chakra. Start doing it right now, right now. If you're listening to this and this is curious, if it's like raising curiosity for you, and if you are doing that already, I'm just encouraging you to continue, because it is going to make such a massive, massive difference in your life. Start doing it now. NOW. right now. If you are already doing that, congratulations, because the world seriously needs to hear your voice. Another way that you can start, and actually the way that I started, was doing morning pages from Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. If you've never read The Artist's Way, it really triggered me the first time that I read it, because it uses a lot of the word God. And at the time, the word God was incredibly triggering for me. I would literally cross it out and write universe. I would write spirit. I would just cross it out. I couldn't with it. But there's a practice inside of that book, which requires that you get up in the morning and you write 3 pages, and it's free writing. You're not thinking, you're just free writing. And that was the first like little bit of opening of the tap for me, was doing that. So if sharing your voice verbally sounds way too scary for you, start doing morning pages, write 3 pages every day. 3 pages every single day, and let it just roll out. You're not judging it. You're not even going back and rereading it. You're just letting it flow through. So do that, and then start using your actual voice. I think so many, not just women, all kinds of people, but really in particular, women, we have been stifled culturally for years and years and years and years. And we're at a point now where you can use your voice. And I think we have a moral obligation to do it. And if you're one of the people who feels called, then you do have a moral obligation to do it. You're being called forward. You're being called to lead in some way. And we have to clarify our message in order to do that. And you're going to do that by sharing your voice. And that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. I've been doing this podcast for almost 4 years now, and it has helped me to grow so much. I started another podcast venturing a little bit. I've got this kind of like funny comedic side of me. I don't really know that I'm a comedian, but like life is so funny. And I have this really funny friend. And so we started another podcast called Midwest AF, where we're talking about the funny Midwestern things about ourselves and just Midwestern culture, because we notice it so much more now that we live in the Pacific Northwest. That there's so many like little Midwestern things about ourselves, or we notice the things that aren't Midwestern here. And so that's another exploration for myself and my voice. And that has led me to, just yesterday, I reached out to a friend who is a singer here in Portland. And I said, I want to MC events. I think I want to MC. I think I can be that person who kind of like, lightens up the room a little bit at the beginning of the show. I would not have done that if I hadn't started morning pages, if I hadn't started podcasting, if I hadn't started this podcast, and then if I hadn't started the comedy podcast. That's leading me to have more confidence. So I hope my journey is helping you to see what is possible for you. If you're listening to this podcast, you've got something inside of you that wants to come out. And again, I think from my experience and from also witnessing, I witnessed thousands of people. There were 14,000 people in this launch for my coaches program last year. I talked to thousands of them and helped usher in a couple of hundred people into the program. I've talked to so many people who have very similar situations, and they're being called forward. And I've watched some of these people be very successful with their podcasts. And have seen other people have other things that have come to fruition from doing it. And it's magical. It's so magical to see. So anyway, I have a client who asked me, she said, do you know of a good podcasting program that I can do right now? And I said, no, I don't. I know one that happens in September. And, I sat on it for a couple of days, and then I thought, you know what? I could teach a podcast program, and I can do it my way, which is the fun way. I know the things that get people stuck. I know the things that got me stuck, and I know what got me through it. And so that's the way that I'm going to teach this podcasting program. It's called Podcast Now. You can go to jenlist.com/podcast now to check it out. We're going to start March 11th. So if this is something that's calling on your heart at all, please come. I'm also hosting a free event this Wednesday and Thursday, 2-day event. And each session is going to be an hour long, and that's totally free. And it's for anybody who feels the call to use your voice. Going to help you. It's called Free Your Voice. And I'm going to help you gain clarity and confidence of your message, and maybe walk you across that threshold to get you to maybe do that Facebook Live, to maybe do the Instagram Live, to maybe even just start morning pages. That can feel very scary to people, starting to free write and letting yourself see the thoughts that are coming out of your head can feel very scary. So come to that event. You can go to jenlist.com/voice to sign up for that. I would absolutely love to see you there. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about my podcasting journey and maybe felt a little inspiration, a little niggle for yourself maybe a little bit of confidence for yourself to step forward. I would love to see you at the event on Wednesday. Again, that's jenlist.com/voice to go sign up for that event happening Wednesday and Thursday. And if you feel called to podcast right now and want to get it started, I am going to help people start a podcast in 6 weeks. Y'all, I did it in 2 weeks. I know you can do it in 6 weeks. And I'm going to walk you through that process step by step by step. I know exactly how to do it. I've done it twice, and I've helped so many people in Kathy's program to get their podcast started. So let me know if you're interested at all. You can reach out to me, DM me on Instagram. You can go check out the podcast program. All the links are in the show notes. And I look forward to seeing you for another bonus episode where I'm going to go a little bit deeper on Friday. Thanks again so much for listening to this episode. You just keep shining your magical unicorn light out there for all to see. I'll see you next time. Bye.